It was a quiet, ordinary night. I thought I was just going to end my day like any other. But what I saw on my little sister's screen changed my life forever. The video that I thought was just a harmless clip turned out to be something far worse. Last night, I found my little sister watching a strange video online. At first, I didn't think much of it. She's only 7, after all. But what I saw and what happened after has left me terrified. It all started when I was heading to her room to tell her it was getting late and she needed to go to bed. As I got closer, I heard a sound, not her voice, something else. I peeked through a crack in the door and saw her sitting there, staring at the screen, watching a video. The video was surrounded by this colorful frame, filled with hearts and flowers, making it look like a typical kid's website. In the middle, the video was playing. It showed someone in an Easter bunny costume, but there was something seriously wrong with it. The costume wasn't scary on its own, but the way the bunny was looking directly into the camera, it was unsettling. The bunny spoke in a calm, almost soothing voice. "Can I ask you a favor? If you can do it, just nod your head." I saw my sister nod. She was agreeing to whatever this thing was asking. Then the bunny continued. "You have a mom and dad, right?" She nodded again. "And you have a brother?" She nodded. "And a sister?" She nodded. Then the bunny's tone changed slightly, becoming a little darker. "Want to know a secret?" My sister's face lit up with curiosity. The bunny leaned closer to the camera and whispered, "They all come to play with me, and they tell me they don't want you to join. Do you think they're right?" My sister shook her head, clearly upset. The bunny smiled and said, "I'm coming to your house soon, and I'll choose one of you to play with. Do you know how to make sure I pick you?" My sister nodded again, her eyes wide. The bunny laughed softly, then asked, "So how about I come tonight? Would you like that?" She nodded one last time. Then out of nowhere, the bunny's tone shifted again, this time more sinister. "By the way, your brother is standing at the door, watching us." In that moment, my heart froze. I stormed into the room and grabbed the laptop from her hands before she could close it. I thought it was some kind of live stream or a video call, but it wasn't. It was just a normal video file playing in a regular media player. I asked her where she found it, but she just glared at me, refusing to speak. I tried checking the browser history, but everything had been wiped clean. I handed the laptop back and told her to go to bed. I figured I'd tell our parents in the morning and let them deal with it. But that night, as I tried to sleep, the words, "Your brother is standing at the door," kept echoing in my mind. How did the bunny know I was there? If it was just a pre-recorded video, how did it see me? I didn't sleep much. I must have dozed off at some point, though, because the next morning I woke up to a dead silence. No one had woken me up, which was strange. And the house, it was eerily quiet. I went to my parents' room first. My mom was dead, stabbed over 20 times. My dad must have woken up and tried to fight back because he was lying on the floor next to the bed, also stabbed. The entire room was drenched in blood. Curtains, sheets, everything. I ran to my other sister's room next. She had been smothered with a pillow while she slept. Her face was blue, frozen in a look of terror I'll never forget. But my little sister, the one who had been watching the video, she was gone, vanished without a trace. The only clue the police found was the Easter bunny costume from the video, left in our house covered in blood. And attached to it was a note, written in perfect handwriting. "Don't think we've forgotten about you. We'll come for you when your time comes. Until then, live in fear." The police haven't found any leads. No one knows who killed my family. No one knows where my sister went. And now, every day, I live in constant fear. Fear that my time is coming soon. Fear that the bunny will come back for me. Have you ever imagined being haunted by something terrifying that you simply can't escape? But worse than that, what if you discovered in the end that the thing haunting you is yourself? In this thrilling and chilling tale, we'll follow the life of Liam, a young man whose peaceful nights turn into a nightmare after he begins receiving mysterious messages from a smiling clown. The more he tries to ignore them, the worse things become, until he uncovers a horrifying truth that will leave you in shock. Prepare yourself for a journey filled with fear and mystery. Are you ready to confront the clown's laugh? Liam was a quiet 25-year-old, working as a graphic designer for a small company. He lived alone in an old apartment in the heart of the city. His life was pretty routine. Nothing unusual, nothing extraordinary. But recently, something had been weighing heavily on him. His nights were no longer peaceful. Strange messages began showing up on his phone, each containing pictures of a smiling clown lurking in dark corners. At first, Liam shrugged it off, thinking it was some anonymous prank. But as time went on, the images became more detailed and terrifying. One evening, while Liam sat in his apartment, he received a video message from an unknown number. Out of curiosity, he clicked on it, only to be met with a scene that sent a chill down his spine. The video showed a clown standing outside a window in a room that looked disturbingly familiar. As Liam's mind raced, he realized the room in the video was his, recorded from right outside his apartment just minutes earlier. Panicking, he rushed to the window, his heart pounding. He peered out cautiously, expecting to see the clown staring back at him. But the street below was deserted, eerily silent. His anxiety grew. Liam became trapped inside his own fear, too scared to leave the apartment. The messages kept coming, and each time, the clown seemed to get closer. One day, it was at his bedroom door. Another, it was in his bathroom mirror. And eventually, it was on his TV screen, laughing, a cruel, echoing laugh that made his blood run cold. One night, lying in bed, Liam heard it again, soft, eerie laughter drifting through the walls. He grabbed his phone and frantically searched for the source of the sound, but it seemed to move, slipping from room to room as if it was taunting him. The living room fell off. The lights were dimmer than usual. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, as if something was lurking. That's when Liam felt it, a presence. He could sense eyes watching him. Slowly, he turned around, and there it was. The clown stood inches away, dressed in bright, colorful clothes, its face frozen in a sinister grin. Before Liam could react, he screamed in terror and ran, but he stumbled, falling hard to the floor. When he scrambled back to his feet, the clown had vanished. That night, Liam knew he couldn't handle this alone anymore. He called his closest friend, Emily, and begged her to come over. When she arrived, she found him pale and trembling, clearly shaken to his core. He told her everything, the messages, the visions of the clown haunting him. Emily, always the rational one, tried to calm him down. telling him it could all just be hallucinations brought on by stress or exhaustion. To reassure him, Emily took Liam's phone, determined to show him there was nothing to worry about. But when she opened it, there was nothing. No messages, no videos. Everything had disappeared. Liam began to doubt his sanity. Was it all in his head? As he wrestled with that thought, his phone rang again. An unknown number flashed on the screen. He hesitated, but curiosity won out. He answered. On the other end was the same chilling sound. The clown's laugh, echoing like a nightmare that wouldn't let go. Seeing how terrified Liam was, Emily decided to stay the night, hoping her presence would give him some peace of mind. But in the middle of the night, Liam woke to a blood-curdling scream. It was Emily. He rushed to the living room and found her lying on the floor, writhing in pain, her face twisted in horror, as if something had attacked her. Liam tried to help, but it was chaos. Then, the TV flickered on by itself, and there, on the screen, was the clown, laughing hysterically. Emily screamed louder, her eyes fixed on the screen in sheer terror. Panicking, Liam tried to turn the TV off, but before he could, the clown on the screen began stepping out, its body twisting and contorting as it crossed the boundary between fiction and reality. But just as suddenly as it all started, it stopped. The clown disappeared. The room went silent. Liam found himself standing alone in the middle of his living room. Emily was gone. It was as if nothing had ever happened. He sank onto the couch, trying to catch his breath. It all felt like a horrible dream. But then, something caught his eye. He looked into the mirror across the room, and what he saw made his heart stop. His reflection wasn't his. Staring back at him from the mirror was the same horrifying clown, grinning from ear to ear. And in that moment, Liam realized the terrifying truth. The clown hadn't been following him. He was the clown all along. The house on Carver Hill loomed at the edge of town, isolated from the familiar safety of light and sound. It stood where the cracked road met twisted trees that bent inward, as though protecting, or perhaps trapping, the house in an impenetrable shroud of darkness. Over the years, the townsfolk learned to avoid it, speaking of it only in whispers, as if the house might overhear and respond. The house seemed cursed by storms, not ordinary storms, but violent tempests that would strike without warning, as though summoned by an unseen hand. Lightning would slice through the blackness, casting the house in an unnatural glow, and in each strike, townsfolk swore they saw a shadow, a figure stretching through the blaze, a fleeting outline in the storm. They called him the Man in the Lightning, a dark spirit tied to the house, perhaps bound to it like a prisoner, or drawn there by some unseen force. Some whispered that he was a ghost chained to the storms, others that he was trying to escape something worse, something that kept him tethered to that cursed place. Then Ellen Moreau and her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, moved in, seemingly oblivious to the house's haunted reputation. A painter seeking inspiration and solitude, Ellen brushed off the locals' warnings, dismissing them as small-town superstition. To her, the isolated setting promised peace, a chance to focus on her work and give Lily a fresh start. But Lily was different. With her vivid imagination and sensitive nature, she seemed attuned to things others couldn't see or feel. That first night, as they settled in, she asked her mother a question in the dim, creaky living room. "Do you think there's a ghost here?" Ellen only laughed, assuring her daughter there was nothing to fear. But in her heart, a faint unease stirred. For a few days the house seemed quiet, welcoming even. But then that first week, a storm arrived with nightfall. The day had been clear, but as the clock struck midnight, the sky erupted in thunder so deafening it shook the walls. Wind howled through the trees, and lightning flared in blinding bursts, casting eerie shadows across the yard, shadows that stretched and twisted as though in pain. Lily awoke with a start, clutching her stuffed bunny tightly as her eyes darted to the window. Each flash revealed dark shapes moving across her room's walls and ceiling, contorting and slithering in the storm's light. Remembering the whispers she'd overheard in town, she shivered. The man in the lightning. They'd warned her mother about him. The townsfolk had said his name with dread, and now her heart raced with a terror only a child could feel, raw and instinctive. Terrified, she ran down the hall to her mother's room. Ellen, roused from sleep, wrapped Lily in her arms and whispered soft reassurances, telling her it was just a storm. Yet as thunder shook the ground and lightning crackled so close it filled the room with an otherworldly glow, even Ellen felt the strange energy surrounding them. Shadows flickered outside the windows, long menacing shapes shifting and blending with the darkness, as if something was watching, waiting, biding its time until the perfect moment to close in. The storm raged on, its fury relentless, and as each flash of lightning illuminated those shifting shapes, Ellen felt a chill deep in her bones. She had dismissed the stories, but now she couldn't shake the feeling that she and Lily were not alone in that house, that something, some presence, was indeed bound to the storms and the house on Carver Hill, and that it had been waiting for them. The storms grew fiercer each night, pounding the house on Carver Hill with relentless, unearthly rage. Lightning carved through the darkness, close enough to raise the hairs on Ellen and Lily's arms, crackling in the air like an electric warning. Lily dreaded sundown now. Each flash seemed to reach for her, each rumble of thunder a monstrous growl creeping closer. She pressed her face into her worn bunny, clutching it tightly as Ellen tried to calm her. Yet Ellen, too, felt the weight of something ancient lurking in the shadows, watching them with dark, unseen eyes. Then one night, Ellen awoke to an empty bed. Lily was gone. Panic flooded her as she searched the house, her calls swallowed by the relentless pounding of rain. She finally found herself at the attic door, a door she had barely noticed before. Trembling, she climbed the stairs and found Lily standing in the dark room, her small form illuminated by faint moonlight filtering through cracked windows. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of rot, and a chill crawled over Ellen's skin as she spotted an old, blackened candle on the windowsill, half burned with faint fingerprints pressed into the wax. It felt as if some part of the past had reached through time to touch her. Without a word, she scooped Lily into her arms, leaving the attic behind. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows loomed heavier, pressing in on her as they descended. The next day, still unsettled, Ellen decided to visit town, determined to learn the truth. After some hesitant questions, an elderly man named Ira finally spoke, his voice a whisper that barely reached her ears. "There was a man who lived there once," he murmured, his eyes drifting away as if seeing into the past. Samuel Grant, quiet, kept to himself, but folks knew he practiced things best left alone. One night, lightning struck the house during one of his rituals. They found him twisted and burnt in the attic. Ira's eyes grew dark. They say his spirits caught in the storms, bound to the lightning. The words echoed in Ellen's mind as she drove back, heart racing. Had she made a grave mistake coming here? She tried to shake it off as superstition, but each night the storms raged harder, the house groaning under the weight of thunder, lightning flaring brighter and closer. Shadows outside stretched and shifted, like figures slipping just beyond sight. Ellen couldn't deny it any longer. They had to leave. That night, as the storm gathered strength, she told herself they would go in the morning. But the storm came sooner, and with a violence beyond reason. The first thunderclap jarred them both awake, and Ellen found herself stumbling through darkened hallways, calling for Lily. Lightning crashed so close that the walls trembled, filling every corner of the house with a blinding white glow that seared through closed eyelids. Heart pounding, skin prickling, Ellen felt the presence close behind her, its cold breath ghosting across her neck, an ancient hunger waiting for them in the dark. Ellen found Lily in the attic, standing by the window, her eyes wide with terror as she stared into the heart of the storm. "Lily," Ellen gasped, rushing toward her. But Lily didn't move, frozen, transfixed by something beyond the glass. "Mom," she whispered, her voice lost beneath the howl of the wind. "Look." Ellen followed her daughter's gaze. A flash of lightning illuminated the window, revealing the figure of a man outside, a face hollow and twisted, eyes burning like embers. He was motionless, his gaze piercing through the glass, the storm, and straight into the attic. With each flash, his features grew clearer. Charred skin, eyes empty and ravenous, and a mouth twisted in a cruel snarl. He didn't move, but Ellen could feel his presence closing in, as if the storm itself were dragging him closer. With a scream, she grabbed Lily, pulling her away from the window as lightning lit up the attic. They stumbled down the stairs, but the house resisted, creaking and groaning as if alive, the floorboards buckling beneath their feet. A whisper rose from the walls, slithering through the thunder. "Lily." It hissed, low and menacing, each syllable curling around her name like smoke. Lily. Ellen held Lily tight, determined to escape. But each step toward the door was met with a thunderous crash that rattled the walls, forcing them back. It was as if the storm itself held them captive, intent on keeping them inside. Another flash, and the man appeared just feet away, his hollow eyes fixed on Ellen, his mouth stretched in a grin that split his blackened face. They tore into the storm outside, their steps frantic as they fought through mud and wind. Neither looked back, yet Lily stole a glance over her shoulder just once. There he stood, at the attic window, his charred face watching, one hand pressed against the glass, as if reaching out to her. The next morning, townsfolk found the house empty. Ellen's car remained in the driveway, abandoned. On the porch sat Lily's stuffed bunny, damp and forgotten, while in the kitchen lay a crumpled note, the ink blurred by rain. We couldn't escape him, the man in the lightning. Since that night, the house on Carver Hill has stood vacant, an ominous shadow on the edge of town. Even on sunny days, no one dares go near it. And on stormy nights, locals say you can still see a shadow in the attic window, waiting, his face twisted in rage, a man forever bound to the storm that took him. There are countless stories of horrifying crimes that no one can explain, even to this day. These aren't just police investigations, they're chilling, real-life tales that happen to people living ordinary lives, just like anyone else. You might find the events hard to believe or even illogical, but today's story is disturbingly true. It's one of Germany's most infamous mysteries, Stories like this are classified as strange phenomena, not simply brutal crimes, especially when they claim an entire family. Today, on Victor's channel, we bring you one of the most terrifying true stories, the story of the Bavaria family. We hope you enjoy this spine-chilling tale. Our story today is about a German family living in Bavaria. This family's tragic case became the subject of an investigation that spanned an unimaginable 85 years. Yes, the investigation started back in 1922 and only concluded in 2007. This harrowing event took place on March 31st, 1922. The victims were the Gruber family and their housemaid. There were 5 family members in total, and they, along with the maid, were all brutally murdered. The chilling series of events began 6 months before the murders. At that time, a maid working in the Gruber household reported hearing strange noises throughout the house. She often heard knocking on the windows, whispers in the hallways, and other unsettling sounds that filled her with dread. She didn't hesitate to tell the family about these eerie noises, but they dismissed her concerns, saying it was all just her imagination. Convinced of what she'd heard, however, the maid grew too frightened to stay and eventually quit her job. Things remained calm until the day before the crime. The family hired a new maid, and on her very first night, the strange noises returned. Not only that, but the family began to notice other unusual occurrences in the home. For example, Andreas, the father, found a newspaper on the floor that neither he nor any family member had bought. The keys to the storage room, where the family kept their tools, also mysteriously disappeared. While these incidents seemed odd, the family tried to dismiss them until something much more alarming happened. On one bitterly cold day, as snow blanketed the ground, a family member noticed strange footprints in the snow, leading from the nearby forest straight to their home. Oddly, the tracks entered the house, but no tracks led back out. The family's fear grew as they recalled the former maid's warnings. Andreas, the father, went to his neighbor to share what had been happening, mentioning the strange experiences of the previous maid. The neighbor suggested he arm himself in case of danger, but Andreas refused. Then came the fateful day. An intruder had indeed entered the home, and on that terrible night, he took each family member, one by one, out to the barn and murdered them. 4 family members were killed and left in the barn. The youngest child and the new maid were murdered inside the house. Strangely, the killer didn't flee the scene. Instead, he stayed in the home for several days, going about his business as if nothing had happened. It wasn't until 5 days later that anyone realized something was wrong, mainly because the house appeared normal from the outside. Smoke was seen coming from the chimney, and the barn was stocked with food for the animals, which kept neighbors from suspecting anything. 5 days after the murders, a repairman arrived at the property to fix a piece of farming equipment. He knocked on the door but received no answer, so he went ahead and repaired the machine, which was outside. Once finished, he noticed a dog tied up at the door, something he hadn't seen before. Sensing that something wasn't right, he went to the family's neighbor, Lawrence, to inform him. Lawrence, concerned that he hadn't seen the family in days, decided to check on them. Inside the house, he found no one, but when he entered the barn, he discovered the horrifying scene of the murdered family. Lawrence immediately called the police, who began their investigation. Strangely, the first suspect was Lawrence himself, due to his close connection to the family and his desire to marry Andreas's daughter, a match Andreas had refused. While Lawrence was eventually cleared, the investigation dragged on for decades without reaching any conclusion, finally closing in 2007. The mind can be a dark and twisted place where shadows can take on a life of their own. I was being followed by death, and death showed itself as shadows. On this particular night, those shadows stretched longer, slipping into cracks and crevices of bark and earth, like a cockroach scuttling for refuge. Among the encroaching gloom and obscure shapes was a man waiting and watching. Though I couldn't see him from the heavy dusk, I knew his eyes were glued to me, glued to my house. He had been following me for some time, and I sensed he was closing in. I pulled the curtains shut. The shadows couldn't get me in my home. I had kept every light on in the house for a week straight now. All the corners of every room were illuminated with a heavenly glow. I picked up my phone. 24 missed calls and 12 missed messages, all from worried family and friends. They thought I was going insane. I had started ignoring them when they reached out, urging me to get help. They suggested therapy because the police and my cameras had not caught any sign of my stalker. I opened up the dial pad and pushed my thumb hard against the numbers. It rang once, then again. I tried to calm my breathing. It was hard living in a constant state of anxiety from the watching eye. When the operator answered, the words came out of my mouth quickly, before she had a chance to talk. "Hello, this is May Tyler at 498 Elm Road. There is a man outside my window, and he has been watching me ever since sundown." "Oh, hello, May," the dispatcher said annoyingly. "You know this is the 4th time this week." I pushed my face near the window, fogging it with my breath. "I know, but he is here. I see him right now. He is outside, standing near the trees." My breathing grew heavier, panic setting in. "If you send someone over now, you can catch him. He's right outside. He has been staring at me all night." The woman on the other line sighed. "And what does he look like, May? Has he moved in the last hours? It could be your imagination." My eyes started to water. "Number, he is real and has been hiding near the tree line. It's hard to make out any features." "You have been calling us about this man for weeks now, and every time we come out, nobody is there. Are you sure there is a person outside your house?" There it was. The police thought I was crazy, too. The first time I called hadn't sounded desperate, but by the 15th and 20th times, I knew I sounded insane. "Yes." The words came out louder and more chaotic than I had intended. "He is outside. He knows I put up cameras and won't come near the house anymore. We will send someone over. It might be a minute, since it isn't an immediate emergency. In the meantime, just stay inside." I hated her condescending tone. I angrily hung up and put my phone on the bed. My mind pulled me back to the memories of my stalker, the Shadow Man. It started when I came home late a month ago. My friends had dropped me off after a night out. My driveway is long and hidden by overarching trees. When I got out of the car, I felt that awful sensation of eyes on the back of my head. It was a feeling at first, the hair-raising goosebump feeling, but as time went on, it got worse. As I lay in bed at night, I could hear something outside rustling in the leaves. The light tapping against my window and doors made me peek outside, and it was the first time I saw the man. As I watched, he watched back. That was the first time I notified the cops. He was outside, and I was safe behind my cement cage of a house. But somehow I knew he had found his way inside. The floorboards creaked under his boots, the sound of doors opening and closing, and the water dripped from my sink. In the morning, I found things in places I didn't put them. The cops came out and searched the premises, dusting for fingerprints, looking for forced entry, and they left empty-handed. Then came the night when I awoke, and my door was slightly opened, a shadow peeking in from the small crack. I remember I screamed and grabbed my phone, calling the police. That night, and the nights that followed, I was hysterical. My family came to stay with me until I calmed down. They helped me install the cameras around the house. They said it was for security, but I knew their looks of doubt were pity. My friends kept asking me to leave the house. If I left, the man would get me. So I stayed and ignored everyone. So here I was, in the same predicament a month later. I was sick of it, though. I was sick of the feeling in my gut, sick of nobody helping, and sick of the judgment I received. I would take things into my own hands, and when the cops got here, I would have him in my grasp. If he could watch me, I could watch him. I looked at my phone again. The time was 3:42 in the morning. I put it in my jeans pocket and walked down the hall to the spare bedroom. I opened the safe and grabbed the gun. If the cops wouldn't help me, I would need to help myself. The only thing separating me from him was my front door. My grip tightened on the gun. The cold metal felt foreign beneath my hand. I could feel my mind wavering. If I stayed in, I could wait for the cops, but then the man would escape like he always did. If I took action, I could end this horrible nightmare. I steadied my mind, then stepped out of the threshold, the warm glow of my safe space fading behind me. The light was replaced by the cold embrace of the wild night. I was inviting the darkness in. Silence coated the forest with an eerily thick layer. I weaved through the trees, trying to find the intruder. I attempted to move out of sight, away from the dirt-covered driveway and around the property like a ghost, unseen until I needed to be. There was no sign of my stalker as I approached the end of the driveway, and then I heard it, the leaves crunching beneath a weight. I sank into the earth and headed toward the sound. There he was, the Shadow Man. He was walking quietly through the trees. I mimicked him, following his silent steps. With each movement, he grew closer to my house. A sense of relief washed over me. I wasn't crazy. He was here. Another step and a crack. A branch beneath me snapped, and the echo of the sound was hauntingly loud. The man stopped in his tracks and turned towards me. I pushed myself behind the tree and held my breath. I was so close. The cops would be here any minute. I needed to act, and now. I steadied my grip on the gun. Both hands steadied each other as they slightly pressed down on the trigger. My heart pounded as I turned from the tree. The man was merely feet in front of me. I pulled the trigger as fast as I could, again and again. The sound of bullets firing off distracted me from my thoughts. I clicked the trigger until the bullets stopped coming. My fingers worked faster than my brain. The man was yelling when he went down, and then silence enveloped the forest once again, thickening the air. I had no time to think or feel. I ran back into the house and straight to my room. Victory and guilt coated my bones. I grabbed my phone off the bed and dialed the operator one more time. I got him. Send the police over. He's lying in my front yard. Bring an ambulance. Who is this? Hello? Can you tell me where you are? Another operator. Not the same one as before. May Tyler. I am at 498 Elm Road. Send a car, quick. I shot him with my gun. I got the guy. I'm not crazy. A smile washed over my face. I was free. The man would no longer stare. His shadow would be gone. Ma'am, slow down. You shot someone? Surprise tinged his voice. I shot the guy, my stalker. He's in the yard. Send an ambulance. Ma'am, it says someone arrived there a while ago. I fell silent. The realization washed over me. Ma'am, the operator said. I ran down the hall. Ma'am, the operator repeated. I pushed past the door. Hello? Ma'am, are you still on the line? My heart raced, and my stomach dropped as I saw the corpse that now lay in front of my house. As I approached him, the shadows seemed to fade in the illumination of my phone. I recognized the familiar blue uniform, the silver badge that sat on his left breast and made out his lifeless face. My eyes fell back to my phone. Ma'am, stay right there. We are sending backup. I ended the call as the gravity of the situation filled my head. The soft glow of my phone dimmed as I stood idle. I stared back at the shadows in the forest, and among the trees, a familiar shadow stared back. His eyes watched me endlessly. I could hear the sirens somewhere in the distance. Maybe the shadows weren't haunting me after all. Maybe I was the shadow haunting them, or